$63 billion. $63 billion is what the last drought in 2019-2020 cost Australia in terms of reduction of national welfare. That's 3% of our GDP. Drought hits hard home, and disproportionately so in regional areas. During the same drought, 2019-2020, price of water across the Murray-Darling Basin rose from an average of $150 per megalitre to $600 a megalitre, so a fourfold increase. That has knock-on effects for us here in cities as well, in terms of cost of living for simple vegetables and products and farm products. The stories kept coming over that drought, and luckily it did rain in the end. Luckily it did. But it affects us here in cities as well. What people may or may not have realised is that same drought, around 50 towns across regional New South Wales, Queensland and Victoria either ran out of water or almost actually ran out of water. That's something we call in the water industry day zero. The day that water no longer comes out of your taps at home. People in cities here in Australia certainly aren't prepared for that sort of thing and what it means for them on a practical purposes. Cities almost stop. This is what it looks like in practice. This is actually a photo from Cape Town, where the term day zero came from. You have to line up every day for hours to get your water. You don't get much. So we need better water security because these sort of things, we don't want them to happen here, and drought and climate change isn't going away. In fact, it's going to get worse. All predictions by scientists and those in the know tend to imply that droughts are going to become more frequent, longer, and have a higher impact. So we need to innovate in this space in terms of water management to be able to combat and adapt to these sort of climate change issues. In 2010, I was lucky enough to go on a Churchill fellowship. Went to the United States, went to Dubai, went to Europe. I looked at water recycling. Of course then, as you heard, it rained as soon as I got back, so interest waned. It's often the case in the water industry. But I kept going, and I got into something called managed aquifer recharge, or better known as water banking. It's a really easy concept, and that's what I want to talk about today. So you can see here, the idea is very simple. You take water when it's available. I'll go into the picture in a moment. You take water when it's available in the wet season, you store it in the underground in a subsurface storage called an aquifer, and then you recover it again when you need it. You can do that every year, so storing it in winter, covering it in summer, or you can do it as a drought resilience measure. So let's say bank water for 7 years and recover it for 3 during a drought. This is a side schematic of what I mean, so everyone's clear. That works, yeah. We take our water in a big basin, take in a wet year, like the year just passed, big infiltration basin. Think of lots and lots of swimming pools, Olympic-sized swimming pools, all back to back. Simply let the water gravity feed down into an aquifer, and you store that water. Store it in the wet times, recover it again when you need it during the dry. Idea seems pretty simple, but what's the evidence that it works? Well, I guess proof's in the pudding in a lot of these things. It does work, and we know it works, because in places that I've visited, they do it, and they do it well. This is what they look like in practice. There's lots of these in the United States. This is from a big basin, takes water. This is from the Arizona Water Banking Authority. Small little outfit, only 4 employees really run this. They recharge water, they take from the Colorado, infiltrate into an aquifer, keep a big tally of how much water they've got, and they take that water back out in times of drought. So they've taken it out recently because they've had a drought over in California and the United States. It's about to flip over and we're about to have our drought here, vice versa. So we know it works, and they've been doing it successfully for years and years, since the 60s. People often ask me, well, can we do that here? You know, where can we store water? You can store water in aquifers all over the place in Australia. Not everywhere, mind you, but all over the place. In fact, I work with the city of Salisbury, who are to the north here of Adelaide. And they store water in a local aquifer here, 200 metres deep. They store urban stormwater. They take it from their local stormwater catchment, recharge it every year, and then recover it to offset their irrigation. And they use it for green space irrigation, industrial uses, and third pipe toilet flushing and things like that in certain little suburbs. So it does work, and it has worked for a number of years. But what we don't do is we don't do it at this sort of scale, the scale needed for agriculture. And we don't do it in places like where there's a water market. So in places like the Murray-Darling Basin, our food bowl of Australia. It has several advantages of subsurface storage, so underground in an aquifer, over surface storages like reservoirs. Big one, of course, is evaporation. How much do you lose? And people are often shocked how much does a farm dam or a dam lose in the Murray-Darling Basin? So some of the less efficient ones can be 40, 50% of the water is just lost through evaporation every year. It's a lot of water just going back up to the sky. You also don't have the problems of things like algal blooms, which can be devastating for our waterways, and mosquitoes and other nuisance pests that can thrive when there's open water. So there's a lot of advantages, yet we don't do it much here in Australia. We do little bits of it, but we don't do it at scale. Here's an example from Alice Springs that I've worked with. You can see the basin out behind it. They're using recycled water from the Alice Springs water treatment plant. They recharge it into an aquifer rather than just dumping it into the local creek, creating this bubble of fresh water that they can take for later. They're using it as recycled water. Frankly, often people just want to get rid of recycled water or recycled sewage. Again, it's slightly different in places like the Murray-Darling Basin, where people already know how much water they're allowed to have. And to operate these sort of schemes in that context, so using river water, is a policy problem at the moment, I must say. In short, you can use the idea of water banking to hedge. So take water in wet years, store it, and recover it again during dry years. So take off the peaks and the troughs, more or less, in what we do. I've tried to explain it in the next graph, and I almost regret putting it up. But on the left, you can see our current situation. We have surface water. This is meant to be the River Murray here, and this is groundwater here at the bottom. We have different levels of entitlements which allow different people different securities. So, for example, a cotton grower wouldn't have the same security of water as a town, for example. And most people, that makes sense, of course. Towns, high priority use. So we have, in wet years, a lot of this really low security water that really no one wants. It's wet anyway, so it's going down the river. People might have heard here in South Australia, we had floods here not that long ago, didn't we? It was actually another type of disaster. But what if we could take some of that water, this low security water, when no one really wants it, when it's really cheap, when people are trying to offload it? What if we take that water and we bank it here in our groundwater, in our bank? Much in the same analogy to your bank account. Just put it away, save it for when you really need it. We could have this high security water and then pull it back out at a time when the river's much lower. You can see there's meant to be a difference there in the river height. When the river's much lower during the dry years. During the dry years is also when the environment needs the water really badly, when everyone wants that river water. So if we could use both the groundwater and our surface water, what's called conjunctively, we could get better outcomes for everyone, people, industry, and indeed the entire basin. So that's really the nub of the idea I'd like everyone to walk home with today is water banking, taking water when it's available, storing it, and recovering it again for its end use later. So people often ask, gee, it seems like a really smart idea, and we do bits and pieces of it here and there. Indeed, we've been doing it in parts of Australia since like the 1960s, bits and pieces. It's a bit bitsy. Why can't we do more of it? So all this water just going down the drain, going out to sea. Not that I think all water going out to sea is necessarily wasted, by the way. There are, estuaries and things to worry about too in the environment. Why can't we manage our water in a more sort of smart way? Climate change isn't going to stop. It's getting worse and worse, in fact, right? Why can't we manage these water in the same way that we might manage our bank account? Some days we have good weeks and bad weeks, but it kind of evens out. Why can't we do that? I hate to break it to people, and as a scientist I hate to say this, but because of policy. Right? It's a policy problem. So Adam, you actually asked me to give a plug for the Policy Impact Program in 2010 last year when you asked... Adam asked me, so what have you done since November last year when I saw you for the Policy Impact Program? I was like, oh, gee, what have I done? Have I done enough in the last 8 months? I'm going to share a couple of things I have done, because I did reflect on that yesterday. But so what is needed, and what can get us over this policy knot? And Australian water policy is very complicated. We've got the federal government up here, we've got all the states. Every state's different, but the states own the water policy and the federal government's got the money, and it's sort of this convoluted problem of trying to organise everyone. And of course, rivers go across straight boundaries and all have different rules and different ways of doing it. So it's complicated, unfortunately. What can we do? Well, looking at that, I did the Policy Impact Program last year in 2022, and if any fellows here are dealing with policy problems, highly recommend that program. I dare say, and this perhaps is heresy, that it was probably more impactful for me than the fellowship itself, in the sense because I've matured in my thinking to some degree. I know better what I want. What do we need? We need policy reform at a state level. This is my ask to the audience today, if there are any policy people here. Help me out on this one. I did talk to Tanya Plibersek and her people, but of course, you know, I haven't cracked it yet. Legislative reform is admittedly difficult to get. Right. The concept of carryover, the ability to forego some of your water today to use it in the future, right? The ability to bank that water is something we do badly in all states of Australia. And the ability to transfer that credit, you know, that you bank the water, take the water, and you transfer it down into the subsurface, that credit you get is something we can't do in pretty well the entire Murray-Darling Basin. Even though the Productivity Commission says, hey, we need to invest in our water security, we still can't do that yet. We can't transfer those credits. Despite this, we have these groundwater areas. They're all across the Murray-Darling Basin. In fact, we know exactly where they are, mapped them all out. They tend to be in places where we already have agriculture, because for years, agriculture's been pumping these same aquifers down, 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 down. So that actually creates the storage. There's about, I'd estimate about 4 kilometres cubic of space where we've already pumped these aquifers nearly dry, where we could be storing water now. People ask, is that a lot? I don't really know. Well, it's about 8 Sydney harbours, if you like those sort of metrics, which I personally hate. But more importantly, it's about 16% of total surface water storage in the Murray-Darling Basin. So that's like a reservoirs you don't need to build. That's here now, we can access them, right? We need to get that policy reform, because who would recharge water if you can't have a right to recover it? So the way we've been tackling this in the past, we've tackled this in the past in places like South Australia and Western Australia. They've used, here in South Australia, stormwater, recycled it via an aquifer and recovered it again. Now, stormwater is a product that no one really wants. It's a disposal problem. But they've been very successful in that. And it's these first demonstration schemes that are needed to show people how this works. And I still have people coming from all over the world to go down to the city of Salisbury to have a look at their aqua recharge systems. They're not that good looking. But people want to see innovation on the ground. Similarly, in Western Australia, rather than building another desalination plant, they took their wastewater and recycled it into an aquifer, and now they drink it. It's going to be up to 20% of their water supply in the future. We need these demonstration schemes at scale in places like the Murray-Darling Basin. So we need innovators and pioneers to back this stuff. They need to be well researched, well documented to show they work. And then we need to use the learnings to scale up. How would you scale this place? How would you scale this technology to get a benefit for the whole basin? That's the policy problem that I'm attacking now. I guess in summary, water banking is the idea that we hedge our bets almost. Use wet years to offset dry years. But another drought's in the way at the moment today. It's starting. So we're going to be ready to water bank in the future. Thank you.